Long COVID is a global health concern, affecting individuals long after their initial infection with COVID-19. One of the most common and disabling symptoms is persistent fatigue, which can last for months or even years. But what actually causes this long-term exhaustion? A new study investigated risk factors for long-term fatigue in young people and uncovered surprising findings that could change how we approach recovery. The study followed 404 young adults and adolescents who tested positive for COVID-19, along with 105 COVID-negative controls. Researchers assessed their physical health, psychological traits, and social factors, looking for patterns in who developed severe fatigue 6 months after infection. Surprisingly, the severity of fatigue was only weakly linked to having had COVID-19 itself. Instead, the biggest predictor of persistent fatigue was how severe a person's symptoms were in the early weeks of illness. Those who experienced more intense fatigue, body aches, and brain fog in the first month after infection were far more likely to continue experiencing symptoms months later. This suggests that long COVID may not be directly tied to the virus itself, but rather to how the body and brain react to illness in the first few weeks. This idea isn't entirely new. Other viral illnesses, including mononucleosis and influenza, have been known to cause lingering fatigue in some individuals. But what's even more interesting is that psychological and social factors played a major role in predicting fatigue. The study found that individuals who experienced high levels of stress, social isolation, and a personality trait known as neuroticism were significantly more likely to report severe fatigue 6 months later. This means that mental health and lifestyle factors could be amplifying long-term symptoms, sometimes even more than biological factors related to the virus. Let's take an example. Emma, an 18-year-old student, had mild COVID-19 but felt exhausted for weeks afterward. She started avoiding activities, worrying that pushing herself would make her feel worse. Over time, she became socially withdrawn, stopped exercising, and lost motivation to re-engage in normal life. As a result, her fatigue worsened. The study suggests that her experience is not uncommon. Psychological and social factors can influence how symptoms persist, sometimes even more than the initial infection itself. On the other hand, Daniel, a 21-year-old athlete, also had COVID-19 but recovered quickly. Even though he felt tired at first, he continued exercising at a moderate pace and stayed engaged with his friends and studies. His fatigue resolved within weeks. This difference suggests that how we respond to illness, not just the virus itself, can shape recovery. So, what does this mean for those struggling with long COVID? The findings suggest that supporting mental health and social well-being may be just as important as treating physical symptoms. Interventions like gradual physical activity, therapy for health-related anxiety, and social engagement could help break the cycle of persistent fatigue. The study also highlights the role of expectations in recovery. If individuals believe that they are permanently sick or that any activity will make their condition worse, they may unknowingly reinforce patterns of inactivity and fatigue. This is known as the nocebo effect, where negative expectations actually worsen symptoms. This doesn't mean long COVID is all in the head. The symptoms are real, but it does suggest that how we think about illness can influence how we experience it. For those worried about long COVID, the key takeaway is this. While COVID-19 can contribute to long-term symptoms, many other factors play a role in recovery. Recognizing the impact of stress, isolation, and early symptom severity can help individuals and healthcare providers develop better strategies for managing and overcoming persistent fatigue. If you or someone you know is struggling with long COVID, it may be helpful to focus on gradual re-engagement with daily activities, seek mental health support, and avoid extreme rest unless medically necessary. Long COVID is complex, but research like this provides valuable insights into how we can support recovery, not just by treating symptoms, but by addressing the bigger picture of health and well-being.